In 2019, a financial researcher ran a survey across 3 different neighborhoods in the United States. Same question in each one. Point to the wealthiest person on your street. Almost every answer pointed to the same type of household. Newest car in the driveway. Biggest renovation. Nicest landscaping. When the researcher cross-referenced those answers against actual net worth data, the overlap was almost zero. Most people assume that visible spending is evidence of wealth, that the person driving the luxury SUV has figured something out that the person in the 10-year-old Honda has not. But that assumption has quietly flipped. The data no longer supports it, and for a growing number of income levels, it never did. So why do people who earn well still feel financially stuck? Why does a 6-figure salary still feel like it disappears every month? The answer traces back to a single mechanism most people never examine: the difference between what your income looks like and what your net worth actually is. That gap is what this video is about. And if you never learn to see it, the gap keeps widening in the wrong direction, no matter how much your salary grows. My name is Alex, and if you have ever gotten a raise and somehow felt no richer 6 months later, pay attention to what comes next, because the math here is not what most people expect. I'm going to show you exactly how the illusion works at every income level and what it is quietly costing you. Once you understand how the faucet and the tank actually work, you will never look at a visible purchase the same way again. The illusion is not reserved for the wealthy. It operates at every income level, and that is exactly where we need to start. Here is something that does not get talked about enough. The trap has no income requirement. Most financial conversations draw a line somewhere. They imply that the person struggling with money is earning too little, and the person who has figured it out is earning enough. But the data keeps refusing to cooperate with that story. Roughly 40% of Americans earning over $100,000 a year finish the month with nothing left over. Zero. Not a little left, nothing. And that number has not improved in recent years. If anything, at higher income levels, the gap between what people earn and what they actually keep has gotten wider. Think about what that means for a second. These are not underpaid people. These are not people who missed out on an opportunity. They earned the salary that was supposed to solve the problem. And the problem did not get solved. It just got more expensive. Now here is where most explanations stop. At the behavior. They say people spend too much, upgrade too fast, and live beyond their means. And yes, that is technically accurate. But it is not the full picture because the behavior is the same across every income level. Only the price tag changes. Consider 2 people. The first is Marcus, a 29-year-old warehouse supervisor in Ohio, earning $42,000 a year. Marcus is financing a $38,000 pickup truck on a 72-month loan. The monthly payment is $640. The truck is immaculate. His savings account has $300 in it. The second is Diana, a 41-year-old marketing director in Austin, earning $210,000 a year. Diana is carrying a $9,500 monthly mortgage on a house she bought 2 years ago, partly because her colleagues had started buying in that neighborhood, and she did not want to be the one who could not. Her investment accounts have barely moved in 3 years. Different incomes, different price tags, identical logic. Both of them are spending to signal something. Both of them are optimizing for how their financial life looks, rather than what it is actually doing. And both of them will tell you, if you ask honestly, that they feel further behind than they expected to be by now. This is the faucet and the tank. Your income is the faucet. It is loud. It announces itself. Everyone around you can see the size of the stream, your title, your salary, your neighborhood, your car. But your net worth is the tank. It is silent. It is invisible from the outside. And it is the only number that actually determines your financial position. A person can have a massive faucet and a tank with a crack running straight through the bottom. Every dollar that comes in leaks straight back out through car payments, mortgage upgrades, and lifestyle expenses that quietly expanded to fill whatever space the income created. The faucet looks impressive. The tank is empty. And here is what makes this particularly difficult to see. The crack in the tank does not feel like a crack. It feels like progress. Every upgrade feels like a reward that was earned. Every visible improvement feels like evidence that things are working. The faucet is running fast, so the tank must be filling. Except it is not. It never was. The stat that puts this in the sharpest focus comes from households earning over $250,000 a year. Currently, 61% of them do not drive luxury vehicle brands. They pull in $250,000 annually. They could clearly afford the badge. The majority choose Fords, Hondas, and Toyotas instead, not because they cannot upgrade, because they have already figured out that competing on faucet size is a losing game. They compete quietly on tank size instead. And from the outside, they look exactly like everyone else. That is the illusion. It works at $42,000. It works at $210,000. It works at $420,000. The mechanism does not care what you earn. It only cares whether you see it. And seeing it means understanding what visible spending is actually costing you. Not just monthly, not just annually, over a lifetime. Because the visibility tax is not a flat fee. It scales with you. And that is exactly what we need to look at next. Nobody thinks they are buying a lifestyle. They think they are buying a car, or a house, or a watch. The purchase feels contained, finite, a single decision with a single price tag. What almost nobody accounts for is the infrastructure that comes with it. Take the case of a former NFL linebacker, drafted in the early 2000s with a 12-year career, total earnings just over $38 million. By 2019, he had filed for bankruptcy, not because of fraud, not because of bad investments, because of cars. At his peak, he owned 14 of them. The insurance alone ran $260,000 a year. Storage, maintenance, registration, detailing, another $90,000 on top of that. When the contracts stopped coming, the overhead did not. The infrastructure he had built to support the image kept billing him every single month until there was nothing left to bill. Most people hear that story and think outlier. And in scale, it is. But in structure, it is not. It is the same decision Marcus made with his $38,000 pickup truck. It is the same decision Diana made with her $9,500 mortgage. The linebacker just had more zeros attached. The logic was identical. Here is how the visibility tax actually works in practice. And this is the part most financial conversations skip entirely. When you upgrade a visible asset, you are not just taking on the sticker price. You are taking on everything the sticker price requires to maintain its appearance. A leased luxury SUV at $750 a month currently does not just cost $750 a month. It comes with higher insurance premiums, premium fuel, dealer-only servicing, and the quiet pressure to park it somewhere it will not get scratched. The full cost of that decision, when you run it honestly, lands closer to $1,100 a month. That is $13,200 a year for transportation, and the visibility tax scales. The $55,000 finance truck and a $62,000 salary comes with the same structural logic as the $1.4 million home bought on a $280,000 household income. Both are visible. Both signal something. Both carry an infrastructure cost that the monthly payment number does not fully reveal. Currently, the average new vehicle payment in the United States sits at just under $740 a month. With loan terms stretching to 84 months on a depreciating asset, Americans are collectively carrying over $1.6 trillion in auto loan debt. That is not a niche problem. That is a systemic one. Now zoom out for a second, because the real cost of the visibility tax is not what you pay this month. It is what you do not build over the next 30 years. Consider two neighbors, both 34 years old. Both earn $95,000 a year. The first, Kevin, leases a new luxury sedan every 3 years. His all-in cost is $950 a month. The second, Patricia, drives a paid-off 2018 Camry. She routes $950 a month into a low-cost index fund instead. At a 7% average annual return, Patricia's account, at age 64, is worth just over $1.1 million. Kevin's garage looks better. Patricia's tank is full. That gap, $1.1 million, was never really about the car. It was about what the car represented, the decision to be seen arriving, rather than quietly building toward the point where arrival becomes optional. And this is where the 4% rule becomes important, because it translates lifestyle costs into something most people have never calculated. For every dollar of annual spending you add to your lifestyle, you need $25 in invested assets just to sustain it in retirement. That $950 monthly car expense is $11,400 a year. This means Kevin needs an additional $285,000 sitting in his portfolio just to maintain his car payment after he stops working. Not his house, not his food, just the car. Every visible upgrade has a price tag, and then it has a shadow price tag. Almost nobody reads the second one, which raises an uncomfortable question. If the math is this clear, why do people keep paying it? The answer is not laziness or ignorance. It runs much deeper than that, and it starts with the math nobody actually runs. Most people think they understand what something costs. They see the price, they check if the monthly payment fits, they move forward. What almost nobody does is run the second calculation, the one that converts a lifestyle decision into a retirement number. That second calculation is what changes everything. Start with a principle called the 4% rule. It comes from a long-term study of retirement portfolios, and it states one uncomfortable thing. For every dollar of annual spending in your lifestyle, you need $25 in invested assets just to sustain it, not to grow it, not to get ahead, just to maintain it without running out of money. Most people hear that and nod vaguely. So let's make it concrete. That $750 monthly car lease is $9,000 a year, which means you need $225,000 sitting in a retirement portfolio just to cover the car. Not your housing, not your food, not your utilities, just the car. The $1,200 monthly upgrade from a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom apartment requires another $360,000 in assets to sustain. Stack 3 or 4 visible lifestyle upgrades on top of each other: the car, the apartment, the wardrobe, the restaurant habit, and you have quietly added $800,000 to $1 million to the number you need to retire, without ever once doing the math. And here's what makes this particularly important in the current environment. This year, the average American household carries over $21,000 in non-mortgage consumer debt. Credit card balances hit a record high recently, crossing $1.2 trillion nationally. The average monthly debt payment for a household earning between $75,000 and $100,000 consumes nearly 22% of take-home pay before a single investment dollar moves. The faucet is running, the tank is not filling, and most people have no idea how far behind the second calculation has put them. Now run the same math across income levels, because this is where the universality of the trap becomes impossible to ignore. Take Sandra, a 36-year-old dental hygienist in Colorado, earning $68,000 a year. Over the past 4 years, Sandra has added $430 a month in visible lifestyle costs: a car upgrade, a streaming bundle expansion, a gym membership she uses occasionally, and a storage unit for things that no longer fit in her apartment. She never felt that any single decision was significant. Each one felt reasonable in isolation, but $430 a month at a 7% annual return over 28 years is $490,000. Sandra did not spend $430 a month. She spent $490,000. She just paid for it in installments small enough that they never felt real. Now take Robert, a 42-year-old software architect in Seattle, earning $340,000 a year. Robert drives a leased $1,100 a month luxury SUV, carries a $12,500 monthly mortgage on a home he bought to match his income bracket, and spends roughly $2,800 a month on dining, travel, and what he would describe as just living well. His visible lifestyle costs above a comfortable baseline run to approximately $4,200 a month. By the 4% rule, Robert needs an additional $1,260,000 in his retirement portfolio just to sustain the lifestyle he has already built. He is 42. His current investment balance is $380,000. The gap between where he is and where he needs to be is not a rounding error. It is a structural problem that his salary alone cannot fix. Same mechanism, different dollar amounts, identical math. The shadow price tag on visible consumption is not a metaphor. It is a literal number. And when most people finally run it, the reaction is the same regardless of income: quiet disbelief, followed by the question nobody wants to answer. How did it get this far without anyone pointing it out? The answer is not that the information was hidden. The 4% rule has been public for decades. The compound growth calculators are free. The math was always available. The reason people do not run it is not ignorance. It is psychology. And the psychology of this trap gets significantly more complicated. and significantly more dangerous the higher your income climbs. That is exactly what we need to look at next. Here's the part that does not show up in any personal finance textbook. The higher you climb, the harder it gets to stop spending. Not because success makes you reckless, because success changes the environment around you in ways that make restraint feel like failure. That is not a character flaw. It is a system working exactly as designed. Start with the Diderot effect. In 1765, a French philosopher named Denis Diderot received an unexpected gift, a large sum of money from a Russian empress who admired his work. He used some of it to buy a single beautiful scarlet silk robe. And the moment he put it on, something shifted. His old wooden desk suddenly looked shabby next to it. So he replaced the desk. But the new desk made the chairs look worn. So he replaced the chairs, then the rugs, then the shelves. Within 2 years, a single robe had triggered a complete renovation of his study and nearly bankrupted him. He wrote about it afterward with remarkable self-awareness. He called it being held hostage by his own possessions. One upgrade had set a new baseline, and everything below that baseline suddenly felt inadequate. That was 1765. The mechanism has not changed. When you lease the luxury SUV, the paid-off Honda in your neighbor's driveway stops registering as a smart financial decision and starts reading as someone who has not quite arrived yet. When you move into the bigger house, the old neighborhood does not feel like a place where you saved money. It feels like a place you outgrew. Each upgrade quietly resets the floor, and once the floor moves, it almost never moves back down. Layered on top of this is the hedonic treadmill. The brain is not wired to sustain satisfaction. It is wired to seek it. When you buy something that genuinely excites you, a new car, a kitchen renovation, a wardrobe upgrade, the dopamine response is real, but it is also temporary. Research consistently shows that within 6 to 12 weeks, the new thing has become the normal thing. The excitement fades, the baseline absorbs it, and the brain begins scanning for the next source of that same feeling. This is not weakness, it is biology. But it is biology that the entire consumer economy is built around exploiting. And here is where income level changes the equation in a way most people do not anticipate. At $50,000 a year, your social environment has a natural ceiling. The visible upgrades available to you are limited by what your peer group is spending. The pressure is real but bounded. At $180,000 a year, that ceiling lifts. You are now surrounded by people spending $230,000 worth of lifestyle. At $350,000, your colleagues are carrying mortgages that would have felt fictional to you 10 years ago. The comparison set does not stay fixed as you earn more. It shifts upward with every promotion, and the treadmill speeds up precisely when the financial stakes are highest. Consider James, a 44-year-old hospital administrator in Nashville, earning $295,000 a year. 5 years ago, he felt genuinely comfortable. Today, he feels the quiet pressure of colleagues who summer in Europe, drive vehicles that cost more than his first home, and send their children to private schools that run $35,000 a year per kid. James has not changed. His environment has. And the gap between what he earns and what his surroundings signal he should be spending has become a source of chronic low-level financial anxiety that his salary alone cannot resolve. This is the social cost of visible wealth that nobody warns you about. The higher the signal you broadcast, the more expensive the company you attract. There is a story from a business dinner in Singapore. A guest spent the evening loudly discussing his portfolio, his properties, his plans. At the end of the night, he suggested the table split a $6,000 wine bill he had ordered unilaterally. Visible wealth does not just attract admiration, it attracts entitlement. Stealth wealth runs the opposite dynamic. When you do not broadcast resources, the people drawn to you are drawn to something else. Your thinking, your judgment, your character. It functions as a filter, quiet, automatic, and extraordinarily effective. The psychology makes the trap feel invisible, but once you see the mechanism clearly, the path out becomes surprisingly straightforward. That is exactly what the Stealth Wealth Playbook is built around. Most financial advice tries to fix the spending. Budgets, tracking apps, spending freezes, no-buy months. And some of that is useful at the margins, but none of it addresses the actual problem, which is not the spending itself. It is the identity attached to the spending. Fix the identity, and the spending adjusts naturally. Leave the identity intact, and no budget in the world holds for long. That is what the Stealth Wealth Playbook is actually built around. The first principle is the most important one, and also the most uncomfortable. Decouple your income from your identity. This sounds simple. It is not, because for most people, income and identity have been fused since the first paycheck. A raise feels like a signal. A promotion feels like a permission slip. The natural response, the socially reinforced response, is to let the lifestyle rise to meet the new number. But that response is exactly what keeps the tank empty. A raise is not an invitation to upgrade. It is the single best opportunity you will ever get to widen the gap between what comes in and what goes out. Every time you get a raise and do not change your lifestyle, you are making the most powerful financial decision available to you. It just does not feel like a decision. It feels like restraint. That reframe matters. The second principle is to make the gap automatic. Do not rely on willpower to route money into investments. Willpower is a depleting resource, and the consumer economy is very good at exhausting it before the end of the month. Set up an automatic transfer the day after your paycheck lands. Route it to a brokerage account, an index fund, a retirement vehicle, whatever the appropriate wrapper is for your situation. The specific vehicle matters less than the automaticity. Money that never sits in your checking account does not feel like money you are giving up. It feels like money that was never there. That psychological sleight of hand is one of the most effective financial tools available at any income level. The third principle is to drive it until it stops. A reliable car does not need replacing because a colleague got something newer. A functional phone does not need upgrading because a new version has been announced. The useful life of most major purchases extends far beyond the point at which social pressure starts suggesting replacement. Currently, the average American replaces a vehicle every 6 years. The average mechanical lifespan of a well-maintained car is closer to 15. That 9-year gap is not driven by engineering. It is driven by the Diderot effect and the hedonic treadmill. Recognizing that does not make you immune to the pressure, but it makes the pressure visible, and visible pressure is pressure you can actually push back against. The fourth principle is to define enough before the money arrives. This is the one most people skip because it requires sitting down before a raise or a bonus and deciding in advance what the number actually means. How much house is enough? How much car is enough? How much lifestyle, honestly, produces genuine satisfaction rather than just a temporary baseline reset? The people who never define this number spend their entire careers moving the goalposts and arriving at retirement having earned a great deal and kept surprisingly little of it. The fifth principle is to mute the comparison feed. Not permanently, not monastically, just deliberately. The financial highlight reel on social media represents the most visible spending of the most visible spenders. It is a profoundly unrepresentative sample of how wealth actually accumulates. The people quietly building are not posting about it. They are not driving something worth photographing. They are not living in a way that attracts attention. That invisibility is not a byproduct of their strategy. It is the strategy, which brings everything back to the box strategy. Take everything you have already built, every account balance, every paid off debt, every dollar saved, and place it mentally in a closed box. That box is not your competition. Your only forward-looking comparison is your past self. Where were you 12 months ago? Where are you now? Is the tank fuller than it was? That is the only scoreboard that produces genuine progress, rather than an endless race against a comparison set that keeps expanding with your income. The crack in the tank is what makes all of this necessary. And closing it starts with understanding what real wealth actually looks like from the outside, which is almost nothing at all. Here is the realization that ties everything together. Wealth is not what you display. It is what you retain. The gap between those two things is where most financial lives quietly fall apart. At $45,000 a year and at $450,000 a year equally. A few things worth carrying forward. Income is the faucet. Net worth is the tank. The faucet size is visible. The tank size is the only number that matters. The visibility tax is not a flat fee. It scales with every raise, every promotion, every upgrade that felt like a reward. And the psychology gets harder to resist precisely when the financial stakes are highest. So here is what to watch for. The next time a raise lands, notice the immediate impulse to upgrade something visible. That impulse is the mechanism in real time. You do not have to act on it. The question worth sitting with is this. If the people quietly building the most are also the least visible, what does that say about everything you are currently optimizing for? There is a related question underneath that one about what happens when the gap between your income and your net worth finally closes. That one is worth exploring next.